And joining us now to discuss, Democratic Congressman Adam Smith, ranking member of the Armed Services Committee. Congressman, thanks for joining us this evening. So we spoke with you the other day about what was possibly coming here. So I have to know if we are, in fact, returning to a doctrine which originates from the 19th century world order. What does that spell for Venezuelans' future and for ours?
Well, first of all, the answer seems to clearly be yes. That is President Trump's vision. And there are all kinds of problems with this that have global implications. But here in the Western Hemisphere, yeah, Trump's vision is basically every leader in the Western Hemisphere must bow down to Trump and to the U.S. And if they don't, then that's a threat to us. And I disagree with that. I think that will sow a lot of instability in the region. And I think it has horrible implications for U.S. policy. This removing of Maduro, I think, will show that. What comes next? I mean, we saw President Trump say, well, the U.S. is going to run Venezuela. Nobody on earth has any idea what that means or how that's going to happen. It introduces instability and chaos. The notion that the U.S. can somehow control the Western Hemisphere is just a foolish assumption that will lead to many, many problems for our country, for the region, and I think for the world.
When you look at what's happening abroad in Ukraine and certainly China, after watching this today, each with their own regional interests, how do you think they will interpret America's actions and whether or not they will see that as a green light to do what they think is under their jurisdiction to do regionally?
Absolutely. And look, there's a long history here. Prior to World War II, and for that whole period, the assumption was strong countries can do what they want. It was actually enshrined in international law. Sovereignty was irrelevant. If strong countries decided to do something, had the absolute power to do that, and it became that sort of global competition. And what it led to was World War after World War after World War. Chaos and violence and destruction. And we decided when we emerged as the world's primary superpower after the end of World War II, no, we're going to try to build something different. We're going to build something that has at least some partnerships and alliances, some international rules of order that are based on sovereignty. And they're being rules that we're all supposed to play by. And Trump has decided to utterly destroy that. And absolutely, Putin and Xi will see this as a huge opening for them to do whatever they want in their parts of the world. So it is incredibly dangerous on a global scale. But the region is really important because let's assume that there's people watching this going, oh, well, that's just sort of mamby-pamby liberal stuff. The U.S. has to do what's in its best interests and we shouldn't have to follow the rules. Is this in our best interests? Well, what are we accomplishing by removing Maduro from power that's going to help the U.S.? It appears that what Trump wants is he wants his oil company buddies to be able to go back down there and make money, and that's the focus. Okay, what's that doing for us? When it comes to critical resources, oil is pretty far down the list today in terms of what is a threat to the U.S., in terms of what we're lacking. So how does this advance U.S. interests going forward, even on that level?
Congressman, you mentioned the potential instability that this could cause in the region. Can you walk me through the dominoes there? This action, what could it possibly cause, not just, again, in Venezuela, but through all of Latin America and this hemisphere?
Sure, and let's be realistic about this. It's not like Latin America is a bastion of stability right now, and I'm not saying that somehow Trump has caused this, but this isn't going to make it better. Nobody at the moment is realistically in charge of Venezuela, and there are a lot of competing power centers. Your previous guest did a better job of explaining that than I can, who are going to compete for that. And there's going to be a fight, and there's going to be instability in Venezuela that's going to create problems there and problems around the region as well. But also a lot of the other countries in the region. Now, understand, what Trump is assuming is that Cuba, every other country is now going to cower in fear in the face of the U.S. and just do what we want. An equally likely outcome is they're going to look for friends. They know the U.S. is coming for them if we don't toe the line. So Russia and China and even Iran are going to become very important partners for a variety of different countries who don't simply want to be under the thumb of the United States of America. So those countries are going to play even more now in Latin America and threaten our interests.
I got to ask you about Congress's role in all of this. On one hand, obviously, the president took a swipe at Congress, saying even if he would have notified them earlier before this operation, given the leaks that happened, it could have endangered the operation. Marco Rubio said that as well. But what do you make of the fact, from a legal point of view, that the president effectively called this a war today in his own words, used the word war to describe what happened in Venezuela, but then seems to downplay it. Rubio, Secretary of State Rubio, trying to make it sound like this is a law enforcement operation, but in either scenario, not involving Congress whatsoever.
Yeah, first of all, it's a war. It's regime change. And Marco Rubio saying, oh, this wasn't regime change. We just arrested a guy who happened to be the president of Venezuela. That's regime change. But look, understand what ties all this together. It is the abdication of responsibility by Congress. You look at everything Trump has done, it has been to concentrate power in his hands and weaken every other institution. And Republicans in Congress, Speaker Johnson, Senator Thune, have let it happen. They have completely abdicated the responsibility that Congress is supposed to have, not just in this area, obviously, but on tariffs, on the president sending U.S. troops, sending troops into U.S. cities to enforce the law, on issue after issue. He violates law after law after law, and Congress effectively dissolves itself. I mean, Mike Johnson had us out of session for 2 months, not exercising any oversight whatsoever. So, yeah, this is absolutely part of what Trump is trying to do, is basically say, look, Congress is irrelevant. I can do what I want to do, and I'm not even going to pretend that it's legal. And you know, we have to keep putting pressure on Republican leaders in the House and Senate to say, okay, you like Trump. Do you like the U.S. Constitution? Do you like having a relevant job as a member of Congress? Do you think Congress should exist? So Trump doesn't. You know, he's done it on spending, on a whole host of other issues where he simply ignores the law and ignores Congress. And the Republicans thus far have allowed that to happen in a way that is fundamentally undermining our existence as a constitutional republic.
Well, Congressman, in addition to sort of leaving members of Congress out in the cold here, every legal expert that we've had on our air has basically said that he is violating all sorts of international laws and norms. In a sense, has President Trump called a bluff on sort of the international world order here, this idea that other countries were going to hold each other and the U.S. accountable as he does all this? I mean, even prior to today, as he escalated in the region, was he sort of calling a bluff on all of them? Like, you're not really going to do anything about it.
Well, I like to think of the United States of America in a slightly different context. He wasn't so much calling a bluff as he was abdicating U.S. responsibility for trying to give us a more peaceful, stable world. You know, he was basically eliminating everything that we have accomplished over the course of the last 80 years post-World War II in trying to build a more peaceful, stable world. I mean, the bluff he was calling, I guess, was the American people. I mean, do the American people support this or don't they? And I think Trump was saying, no, I'm just going to bulldoze my way through it, and I'm going to build the world that I want. And again, as I explained, there's a reason why it's not in our best interests. It leads to conflicts and conflict and instability. I think, look, part of the problem here is we have such a pervasive negative feeling about where things are at in America, and we have for at least a decade now. And I know there are problems. Civil society is not easy. But I wish we'd be a little more cautious about tossing everything overboard in terms of what the U.S. has built over the course of the last 80 years. We have enjoyed a greater level of prosperity than any country in the history of the world, prosperity that has been unevenly distributed, but that's more a matter of domestic policy than foreign policy. Trump wants to smash all of that. And too many people are like, well, I don't like what's going on anyway. Sure. But things can always be worse. And I think we need to have some of those bedrock principles of the rule of law and trying to work for a more peaceful international order instead of just might makes right. I don't think we'll benefit from that.
Congressman Adam Smith, it's great to see you as always.